How do you articulate better questions in almost any conversation? To understand this, we're going to discuss 3 secrets from one of the most articulate speakers in our country, Palki Sharma. In case you don't know who she is, she's a news reporter and she's known for her ability to articulate good and insightful questions.
I have been into public speaking for a very long time. I have been on the stage, I've been a journalist, I've been an anchor. I can do it.
In this video, we're going to look at an interview she did with the Prime Minister of New Zealand, where she's able to ask questions, not just probing him on important issues, but also making the interview more engaging to listen to. And these lessons of learning to ask better questions can be applied in almost any setting, whether you're somebody who's part of a team, whether you're leading a team, or just want to improve your conversation skills. Because it's only when you learn to ask better questions that you're able to foster better relations and deeper connections. So in this video, we're going to get into a framework to help you articulate smarter questions for deeper responses, how to not fall into interview mode and ask boring question after boring question, and how to make your listener feel heard to foster deeper connections. By the way, if you're new here, hey, my name is Hrideep from Frantically Speaking. If you're into communications content, we release that regularly, so hit subscribe. And if you want to take your communications learning to the next level, you can click the link in the description, check out our courses and see if we can work together. We are focused on training a lot of professionals improve their communications. And honestly, a lot of transformations that we've been seeing are not from people who are doing more, but doing less in a smarter way. So let's try to focus on that. So let's understand the first secret, which is the CQC framework. Before I explain to you what this framework is, watch this clip.
As someone who has been a leader in the corporate world before joining politics, what is your advice to others who are looking to work with this current American dispensation? Because the president likes to think of himself as a deal maker. And so you've cracked many deals yourself in the past. How would you approach this relationship with President Trump, and what's your advice to him?
Yeah. Now, if you notice, this isn't just a simple question. It's not just a one-liner. In fact, the CQC method is applied very nicely over here. CQC essentially stands for credibility, question, context. It simply means instead of just asking a question, you start by providing credibility to your listener, which gives them a reason to foster a deeper response. You then move on to your question and then provide more context or details to get a more specific response. I'm going to play the clip one more time, but this time break it up into credibility, question, and context. So let's start with credibility first.
As someone who has been a leader in the corporate world before joining politics,
and then she moves on to the question.
What is your advice to others who are looking to work with this current American dispensation? Because the president likes to think of himself as a deal maker.
And finally, she gives more context.
And so you've cracked many deals yourself in the past. How would you approach this relationship with President Trump, and what's your advice to him?
Yeah. And this works way better than just asking a single line question. For example, let's say if you need to give feedback to somebody, instead of just saying, hey, can I give you a little feedback on how you can improve your presentation skills? We can instead start by providing credibility and saying, you've always been great at bringing fresh ideas to the table. We then move on to the question by saying, can I share one quick thought on how you presented the last suggestion? And finally, we give context. It had a lot of potential, but I feel if you had tied it back to the team's goals, it would have had a stronger impact. What do you think? Here's another example. Now, let's say if you are asking for advice, here's how you can use the framework again. You've navigated some tough stakeholder conversations really well. But how do you prepare when you know someone is going to push back hard? Because I have a product roadmap meeting coming up next week and I know the VP is going to really push back at almost every idea we have to present. And a final example is if you're making small talk and need to ask a question, here's how you can use this framework. You mentioned you're from Bangalore. That's a beautiful city. Did you grow up there your whole life? I visited one time during December and I completely fell in love with the vibe of the city. I'm just curious to see how it feels to live there full time. So that's how you can use CQC. But how do you ensure that you don't just keep asking question after question after question and fall into interview mode? Because unlike Palki, we are not trying to become an interviewer. We're just trying to improve our ability to ask regular questions. And to do that, we want to follow something called the respond and ask technique. Let me play this clip to show you how.
Yes, and 30 years is a very long time. If you've seen the transformation of India, well, you know how much. Yes, it has been incredible, absolutely. How do you describe your relationship with Prime Minister Modi and his approach to foreign policy?
So if you notice, before she moved on to the next question, she first used a statement to respond to what the Prime Minister of New Zealand said, and then moved on to the next question. This adds more flow and connectivity to a conversation and prevents it from going into interview mode. An example of this is, let's say if you are having a conversation with somebody and you ask, hey, what did you do last weekend? And they say, oh, I went on a road trip. I was actually out for the whole week. Now you can say, oh, really? Where did you go? And they say, oh, I did a road trip from Mumbai to Goa. And then you can ask, oh, really? How was it? And then it falls back into question after question after question. Or instead of they say, I did a road trip to Goa, we can say, oh, I actually did that road trip back in college. And I kind of fell in love with how a road trip experience is better than the actual trip itself sometimes. Did you feel the same way, or was it more of the destination for you? Or if you're at a networking event and you ask somebody, hey, so you've been working remotely or from home? And then they say, oh, I've been working remotely from 2020 actually. Instead of responding with a question, we can first say, oh, that means you must have quite a solid setup now. Do you miss the office vibe though, or you prefer the remote setup itself? Even a simple sentence like that can help to make the conversation flow a lot more as opposed to being in interview mode. But the most important thing we want to do is all of these questions can feel surface level until we actually make the other person feel heard. And the best way to make them feel heard is to use this technique. Watch this clip.
As you mentioned, there are obvious points of convergence, and I know that with your visit here, there's fresh momentum in the trade talks. But do you think some of it has also been turbocharged by Donald Trump's tariff war on the world?
Now, forget the rest of the question. Just hear the first 3 words that she used.
As you mentioned.
As you mentioned. Those 3 words can serve amazingly well when you're asking a question. Because when you precede a question with that, you're able to draw from what the other person said itself, which not only shows deep listening on your end, but it also fosters a better response. So instead of just asking somebody, hey, are you planning to travel anywhere this holiday season? We can say, you mentioned that you were looking to do a solo trip at some point. Since the holidays are coming up, are you planning to do that this time? So simply proceeding with those 3 words, and it doesn't have to be just as you mentioned, it can also be, hey, you had said before, or I remember you saying this last time, also work more or less in the same way. The objective of you using those words is to make the other person feel that, oh, he remembers or she remembers what I had said last time. And that just results in better questions. But what if you're put on the other side and you are the one who's responding to people? If you want to know how to articulate better responses utilizing storytelling methods, you can check out this entire video we made using the example of Amir Khan right here.